Alrighty, guys. So it is 3:30 this Tuesday, July 15th, and we are looking at the market, which is kind of all over the place, but net to the downside. So this morning we talked about we had a nice little pop in the upside in the overnight due to the Nvidia's ability to sell chips into China again. And so we didn't really get, then we had the CPI number. That was actually a decent number, kind of in line with expectations. Market reacted volatile, but not directional. And since then, we didn't get any super strength to get started, but they pretty much started showing weakness from right from the get-go. We never really recovered with a nice rally. So at this point, if I scroll back, you can see how that looked. This was the starting point. Direct, volatile, but not directional. And I was looking this morning, that was the analysis, looking for a little bit of strength for a move to maybe to get short for rotation down. We didn't get much of that. If you want to call this strength, I would not necessarily look at that. I would look for a middle rally to the upside before I key in on that. But it pretty much started with some weakness, and that's been drifting lower all day into like the 2 o'clock or 11 o'clock hour. So after the London close, we got a little bit of reprieve, and then of course now we have a couple of attempts to take it lower. So I would say we are kind of holding on to the gain. So we are we're pretty much holding on to the range bound area, but not able to retrace and make any new gains for the day. So we are pretty much stuck here right here. We have backed off the upper edge, right back down into value, but not necessarily selling off. So I was concerned this morning that they would start taking out the session lows, start piling on really on the downside, but hasn't quite happened. It doesn't mean it won't happen in the last half hour, but definitely a lot of volatility back and forth. So the big moves to the downside, and then they grind up, and then big moves to the downside, and uh, hard to say where they come from, but definitely big players stepping in now and then and doing stuff. I thought that here at the 2 o'clock hour we had a shot at getting up above the mean, but looks like they the algo traders had different plans, so they definitely back down again. So far, yes, two trades on the ES. They were down here earlier on today. They were down first. I took a bought on the way down here. A little bit too aggressive at the 63, a little bit below that level here, and below that support area. And then I bought again at this lower support area for a nice little gain. So I'm back basically one loser, one winner. I'm up $10, and that's about it. And I got out of that trade right at that reverse retest. And since then, yes, you can see how it just kind of didn't go anywhere from there. And then we saw weakness from that spot. So probably a good call to get out there. So at this point, we'll see if they're going to try to bust the lows here and then try to drive this lower. Would not surprise me if they do, but it's kind of hoping they won't. But starting off right now, I would start off primarily range bound. I would look for early weakness to see you can retest these lows, maybe take it lower. That kind of the dynamic. So I would look to sell against the 6300, 6315s for rotations back down and staying range bound with a slight bias to the downside starting off. Now, if they can't really take it lower, I'm just going to go back range bound. So that's kind of what I'm looking at on the ES. To get started, and news this morning, or the news tomorrow morning, sorry. We get the PPI number come out, industrial production at 9:15. So 8:30 we get PPI, 9:15 we get industrial production. We have Fed speakers in between. We have an oil report at 10:30, beige book at 2. So basically at 8:30, 9:15 we get news tomorrow morning. And that could be interesting. We'll see how the PPI number comes out. Looking at so starting off range bound, slight bias to the downside, or basically looking for early weakness to get started, and then we'll take it from there. Uh, So looking to sell up to that 63.15. Above that level, I would probably go back to the long side. But at this point, that's kind of where we're looking at. On the Nasdaq and the bonds, for the bond market, a big move down here on the news. So they took it lower, straight down actually on after the news, and then it kind of just settled in here at 112. Interesting to see how the bond market, typical repricing, right? They just news comes up here and then repricing it right to a level, boom, and then nothing. So unless you get on that early move, you'll just be here. You can't trade it over here. It's just twisting in the wind. So once you run out of gas, pretty much twisting in the wind. A lot of time, bond market looks like that and kind of dies off in the afternoon like this. But I would just start off range bound, keep a slight bias to the downside to get started. Look to sell strength up to that 112.08, 10. And then if they start retracing further into these single prints, I would hop on the long side and see how far they can retrace it on the upside. When it comes to the Nasdaq, not quite as directional to the downside, holding on a lot better, probably because of the Nvidia strength. But definitely, they were up here. They not attempt to really run it higher, but just kind of weakness, and we have stayed in the range pretty much. So far, they're holding the 23 100s, and I would say they can hold this ledge here at the 80s, 80 to 100s. I think we start off on the long side on the Nasdaq. So Nasdaq in a good spot to take it higher. ES has been a lot weaker today, so. Uh, but as long as they hold this area, the 23 100s, I would stay on the long side. And but if they take it out, I would just go back range bound and look for weakness. But given where they're trading right now, I would start the overnight looking for weakness and see if they can retest these lows, maybe take it lower. And if they can't, then basically go back on the range bound with a bias to the upside instead. We'll see. But I mean, you can see it now, it's a retest failure, traded back up again. A lot of volatility on the Nasdaq back and forth, but this is difficult to trade. There's a lot of choppiness in here. Also light volume, 1.2 million on the Nasdaq, 990 on the micro ES. So a decent volume today, actually. And then finally, oil and gold. No trades on the Nasdaq or anything like that, but just two trades on the ES today. And on gold, they took a leg lower. As we thought they could not hold this upper level. We're looking for short trade average in the 60s and the 67s. They got to 65, and then they a little bit higher before they retraced. And took out the 50s, and at that point we were back on a short side, retracing back to the mean. So that was your entry. If you got on that one, you had a nice run down here, at least to 40s, and then they retraced, and then it came back down later. So not easy trading on gold. Back and forth, pretty sloppy stuff going on there. But we are back to values. I would start off range bound on gold. Look to fade the edges fairly equally on gold to get started in the overnight. If anything, I would maybe start with a slight bias to the downside to see if you can retest these lows, maybe take it lower. And then finally, oil, not much going on there at all. They are range bound. I would just start off range bound on oil. Look to sell against the 67.10s, look to buy against the 66.20s, and just see if they're going to break one of those edges. All right, so that's range bound oil, range bound gold, with a bias to the slight bias to the downside to get started on gold. But that's about it. So no trades on either of those two today. Only thing about I did with two contracts on the ES, one loser and one winner, and up $10 on that. So we'll leave it there, guys. And we'll wrap it there, and I'll see you back in the morning, bright and early, and go at it again. All right, guys, later.